This is Chris Brunhaver. I'm here with PS Audio, and I'm in our music room 2 answering questions about speakers and rooms and acoustics, and doing my best to help bolster some of the great work that Paul has already done on our channel here with reaching out to people and providing some free information and our opinions. We got plenty of those. So this question is from York in New York City. And he's looking to maximize the sound from his speakers in a limited space. He says, "Hi, space is at a premium and cost of living is high in New York City. I have a small living room. It's 12 by 12 feet. It's very hard for me to move my speakers away from the wall to give some breathing room. I have a sofa facing the speakers, and if I move the speakers away from the wall, there's not enough room to walk. Is there any way I can get decent sound and also maximize the soundstage in my space? I have a floor standing and bookshelf speakers on a stand. My wife also wants me to get rid of one. Which one should I give away? Hope you can fix my listening pleasure and also save my marriage." Boy, that's a task, but it's a good, that's a very common issue. Living here in Colorado, we've got a little bit larger spaces, maybe than in a New York City apartment, but that's a real common question. And I think it's something that you see a lot in Europe too, where, or parts of Asia where there's, in urban areas. And those are places where you see proliferation of high performance, monitor, stand mounted speakers, or slim towers. What you find in a small room is there's a different set of acoustic challenges, especially something 12 by 12. Whenever you have the same, room dimensions in multiple axes, you get a reinforcement of the room modes that are based off of those dimensions. So you tend to have uneven response in the bass, and then you sort of compound that by putting a speaker very near a boundary. And speakers in general, there's a transition period between where at low frequencies they're omnidirectional, and then as the sound wavelengths get to be of a similar size to the width of the speaker itself, they start to be reflected off of the front baffle, and that's called a baffle step. And so there's this shelving up of the response there. So manufacturers, when they design a speaker, have to balance that back down, and you have to make certain assumptions about how far the speaker is from the room boundaries, so the front wall or the side walls, when you're adjusting that baffle step. So typically they're meant to be close to one boundary. Let's say, there's a few dB of step typically in speakers. Sometimes there's more. So as you place it really close to a wall, you'll get a shelving up of the response below, say, 400 or 500 hertz. So the voices will sound chesty, or bass will sound accentuated or kind of woofy. There are speakers that are designed to be mounted closer to boundaries, things like on-wall speakers or other things like that, or speakers like the ones we're working on. We're putting a boundary switch on them that or placement control that adjusts things like that. I don't know which speakers you have. You're talking about having both towers and bookshelves. I would typically say a bookshelf and then a pair of subwoofers is what I would recommend, because with the subwoofers you can actively adjust some of that stuff, so that you can, in a small room, place the subwoofers in a different place than your main speaker, so you can help mitigate some of the room modes, and also adjust their level, because it's a small room and you might be getting unwanted extra reinforcement at low frequencies in a passive speaker that is full range. So if you had a tower speaker that plays down to 30 hertz, and it's where you have it placed for imaging or wherever you can put it, has bass issues, then having separate subwoofers can be a big benefit in those rooms. So that's the direction I would go: is keep your bookshelves, get a pair of subs, and the other thing, there are some high-end speakers that are specifically targeting that sort of placement option. So there's a couple of products on the market that are very expensive but interesting. that are like the Key speakers, the Key 3 and the Dutch and Dutch 8C. These are speakers where they're called cardioid, where they don't really have sound going rearward. Normally, the speaker is kind of omnidirectional at lower frequencies, but these ones only have sound sort of going sideways and forward at lower frequencies. And then they have a subwoofer below that that's omnidirectional. So it's trying to minimize that effect of placing it near a wall and actually using that to its advantage. So I think that's sort of an interesting approach to that problem. I don't have a lot of hands-on experience with them. There's a local recording studio that has some of those, but and I've heard them at trade shows. But there are companies trying to address that in different ways. Like I was saying, we would have a boundary, sort of placement control on some of our stuff. But yeah, I think the issue you run into on top of that is that your perception of the sound of the speaker is not only sound coming directly from the speaker, but early reflections. So when you place a speaker near a boundary, you get reflections that your brain perceives as part of the original sound of the speaker, because if they're close enough in time, that early reflection is perceived as the original event. And this is relating to what's called the precedence effect and some other things. And so your brain, depending on frequency and things, hears sounds from 2 to 5 milliseconds apart as the same sonic event. And so when you have these early reflections by placing a speaker near a wall or side wall, for instance, you actually get a comb filtering response where there's these notches in the response of the speaker from the time delay of the reflection. And that causes coloration, basically. And it also reduces the sense of your ability to localize things, the sense of imaging and stuff. So I tend to recommend, not placing it near a boundary, even if tonally it's, has adjustment. If you can tape a spot on the floor or do something where you can pull your speakers out where you know they sound good when you're doing critical listening and then push them back when you're not. That's one solution. Not a great solution, but excuse me. But those are all different thoughts on it. It's not a perfect, sort of thing. You do the best you can with what you got. And, there are some sort of room correction EQ systems that can address some of this stuff too. Not physically, acoustically, but in the signal processing realm. And that has its own set of issues too. I'll be speaking more about that on some other questions. But yeah, I would say keep the bookshelves, get some subs, and just do the best you can with what you got there, and try to keep the wife happy as well. Okay, thanks so much. Bye-bye.